So, with Phrolova finally being able to spend her annual leave from the Praxis, I suspect it will probably be a while before we ever see her again. Thus, I think it's a good time we really take a bit of a stroll down memory lane and cover our Chunibyo's life story since the first time we met her. After all, we've been with this girl since all the way back in 1.0, and now, a year and some months later, we've reached one of the closing chapters in her life. Not the ending, because I'm convinced we'll see her again. If she's alive, she can be active. But for you viewers, you don't need to be active. Just sit back, relax, and let my Yap Fest proceed. The Yap Fest covering the life of Phrolova, the conductor of the Praxis Overseers. Before her time as the conductor of the Praxis Overseers, Phrolova was just a young violinist, keen on performing around the world. She hails from a small town, likely Ouroboros, and as a result, everyone probably knows everyone. It's a very tight-knit community. However, with Phrolova often going out of town, this puts her and her mother at a bit of an odds. Emphasis on a bit though, because it's clear that her mother still loves her. After all, Phrolova's pure and beautiful dress is a gift from her. Thus, as Phrolova is about to venture onto her next performance, she promised to apologize to her mother when she returns. And it's all flowers from there. Life was indeed beautiful. Life was great. Oh, I'm sure she wished it could feel like this forever.
Careful what you wish for.
Much like the dinosaurs, the people of Ouroboros, without warning, became extinct. Lest for one, Phrolova, whose death actually activated the awakening of her residence abilities. And yes, as a sole survivor, oh, the survivor's guilt was palpable. Searching for any signs of life within the ruins, she wondered to herself, why is our world like this? Good, ordinary common folk, by some cruel twist of fate, immediately snuffed out. Their world ended not with a bang, but a whisper, because it just all happened so fast, so suddenly. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if Phrolova had attempted to join them too. But alas, her unique constitution probably didn't allow for it, for her body now became half tacit discord, half human. Nor did it allow for her to age, and thus, with her unchanging form, Phrolova continued to roam the earth, in search of some kind of miraculous solution that could bring her people back. Now, at one point during her travels, Phrolova turned to religion, offering her faith in return for those she loved. Yet the divine remained silent. Which doesn't surprise me. What the hell do you think Imperator's gonna do? Split Phrolova from her family even more? Although, Phrolova mentions how she watched the fools take her abilities as a free elixir, which, depending on the interpretation, could actually be quite dark. Did these religious zealots try drinking her blood for immortality or something? But anyway, sometime later, after accepting religion's failure, bet she'll turn to science to help bring back her people. So she surrendered her own flesh and blood for research. But did that do anything? Nope, because she was deceived. Rather than looking to resurrection, the scientists exploited her sacrifices to continue their own pursuits towards immortality. God damn it. So, when religion and science failed her, fine, she'll turn to humanity. Third time's the charm, right? Nope, because when she questions the populace about whether Wave 1 phenomenons could ever cultivate life, blasphemy, get this girl out of here. She was cursed, branded a harbinger of doom, and booted. At all corners of civilization's infrastructure, she got the middle finger. So fine, she'll do things herself. And thus, for many, many years, she sought for solutions in silence, facing failure after failure, loss after loss, all alone. And yet, she continues to try again and again and again. She's probably been at this singular goal for centuries. And when I think about how quickly everyone disappeared from her life, it doesn't surprise me. She can't accept their deaths. How could she? There was no build-up, no expectation, no warning. Just poof, gone. Well, no matter her mortal status, she can't operate in the world unless she's got money. So I fully suspect as part of her hustles, she continued her activities as a musician, and not just as a violinist, because at some point in time, she eventually got taught how to use the conductor's baton, since she wanted to create a far stronger melody. And by rule of numbers, you'll be able to do that better with multiple instruments rather than just one. She's been at this music gig for so long that viewers unknowingly question her about her own music. I.e., when people bring up musical pieces composed a long time ago by a person with the same name as her, they're literally referring to Phrolova. They're all Phrolova. She's just been alive that long. It seems that in the past, her music was so depressing that they drag anyone already on edge right down to despair. And when I think about that, alright, perhaps this was Phrolova's outlet in coping with her years and years of grief. Centuries of sadness packed into her melodies. God damn. But regardless of its content, I'm betting there were still bangers. I mean, she's got quite the fan base. Canonically, after every performance, she's getting swarmed by fans. So do you know what she does? Get these pre-signed autographs and be gone. Haha. Anyhow, on one particular night, her performance would be met with a very special listener. Not even a clap, this audience member for the entire performance looked like they were sleeping. But no, because when Phrolova confronts this audience member, he actually expresses how he was simply following the vibes of her performance. It was a sorrowful piece, so he felt solemn mourning was the most appropriate reaction. You hear that? That's a doki moment, because this random ass audience member is the first to actually identify the true meaning of her piece. As expected of our Gathering Wives harem lord, Rover the Rizzler. and his rizzing continues. Rover's emotional intelligence is also able to see through Phrolova's ambiguous answers on the source of her piece of sorrow. He knows that the pain in her music is from something genuine, something real, a pickup Phrolova is astounded by. After all, after centuries, Phrolova finally meets someone that actually has some semblance of understanding to her. Sure, it's just a chance meeting to most people, but to Phrolova, this was something far more. And her affections only grew, as Phrolova was able to yap to him about absolutely everything she's kept closed in her heart. Albeit from a third-person perspective, she lets Rover in on her past, her tragedies, and her feelings. She did indeed feel very comfortable with being vulnerable with him. Mind you, after everything she's been through, she's probably kept her guard up against everything in this world. But not today. Not tonight. She told Rover everything, without restraint. Gosh, the weight off of her shoulders must be immense. I mean, yes, perhaps it was a form of trauma dumping, so whoops. But hey, Rover's an understanding guy, and now Phrolova feels way lighter after getting centuries worth of things off of her chest. Now Rover proposes that all of this could actually be a new opportunity, chance for her to start over, much like he did. But what Rover means by this, well, that conversation will be saved for another time, ideally. And when they do reunite, at least Phrolova's current musical piece will be finished, because the song she performed tonight is still incomplete. And Rover, he promises to return to her once she's able to finish it, and he'll keep to that promise, no matter what. Man, what an upstanding guy. Rover's so upstanding, he stood her up for years. Did you know Phrolova is the kind of girlie that keeps a journal too? And it's in this journal that we see her heart literally breaking in real time. While she did jot down about her beautiful encounter with Rover, she also jots down how she never saw him again. With every subsequent performance, it was really his presence that she was most looking forward to. But alas, he never came. And eventually, painfully, she accepted that he never will. It's also in this journal where she kept record of every single attempt she's made at trying to bring back her people. But as you can see, yeah, valid crash out though. Girl's been at this for centuries, sacrificing everything to gain absolutely nothing. You know how Phrolova's usual demeanor is seemingly so emotionless? Honestly, I suspect that's because she just used up all of her emotions in this journey of hers. But as the saying goes, it's always darkest before dawn. And after one particular performance, she is met by the Fraxidus, namely through one of its overseers, the Grand Architect. Manifesting Triss, one of the village girls from Phrolova's home, Phrolova is not only just able to see her, but she's essentially able to spend a whole day with her. It felt like the old days, as if Triss was always alive. Now, of course, the validity of this manifestation is up to question, but hey, it's still a lead. Something Phrolova hasn't ever had in centuries. And with the Fraxidus more than willing to lend her every single resource at their disposal should she join them, it's just a wrap. It literally is just a wrap. Rover broke her heart, and the Architect mended it. Thus, Phrolova is officially employed into the Fraxidus. Now let's see what she's been up to once our Rover comes into the story. Phrolova and Scar are sent to Jinzhou to obtain a specific item. Later on, Phrolova is seen with Scar within the heart of Crownless, a structure that hauntingly floats above Nor 4 Barrens. Whilst Overthax's awakening is thought to be taking a little longer than expected, Phrolova assures Scar that it will awaken eventually. After all, with all the war and death they're inciting, it's only a matter of time before the Thenodian of War wakes up. And when Rover's presence is detected, Phrolova for the moment has no desire to meet with him. Firstly, she has nothing from him she needs. And secondly, she's got more important matters to attend to, namely perfecting her merging of human reverberations, essentially the frequencies of dead people, to tacit discord bodies. Phrolova's forte does enable her to do this, much to Scar's surprise, but she does plan on one day using Leviathan's power to fully glue these pieces together, thus preventing her from always being the one that powers their merging. Leviathan, by the way, being the Thenodian of Renasita, but we'll get to that region later. Still, this is one part of Phrolova's plan to bring her people back. She's going to fuse the reverberations of her deceased people into the bodies of tacit discords. So, as she conducts the merge, Phrolova also reminds Scar not to have too much fun with Rover, as they still need to collect the very item they were tasked with coming to Jinzhou for. Yeah, Scar had too much fun. Oops. So here comes co-worker, now caretaker, Phrolova, coming to pick up her rabid child. But it's here where she finally reunites with Rover. After what? Probably another century or two? Too bad Rover remembers squat. Though I think Phrolova's aware of this too. Nevertheless, Scar complies, assuring Phrolova that he still remembers what he came here to do, and that he won't ruin her perfect movement. And so the two get away. Oh, so here's a fun little fact about Phrolova and Scar. If you look at Phrolova's voice lines when mentioning Scar, she literally says,
"Madmen who don't play by the rules lack elegance. With but a breath, they undo even the most meticulous of plans. I care not for his true desires, only that he remain as far from me as fate will allow."
God damn, that's the kind of line that'll finish a man. But anyway, later on, Phrolova is once again seen manipulating tacit discords towards Jinzhou, but this time it appears she's doing this to erupt even more war in Jinzhou to fully facilitate Overthax's awakening. And then, it's on Rover to subdue the Thenodian as Phrolova attends to another matter. After the people of Mount Firmament are saved from their literal time crisis, Phrolova is seen lurking in the region, along with another mysterious Fraxis member. They look too fancy to be a mook, but NPC enough to perhaps not be an overseer. But what's crazy is that they've still hooded up this character to this day, based on the Fraxis concept art featured here. Just who are you? Are you really this enemy? Well, regardless of their identity, Phrolova here just reflects on how Rover's success isn't anything important against their goal. They got what they needed from Huanglong, so it's all good. And in witnessing Jinzi's second awakening, which is what she tapped into to save Mount Firmament, the Fraxis are now that much closer to controlling the artificial resonator awakening process, thus enabling them to eventually gain powers that rival even the Sentinels. God damn, I completely looked over this line. Because when you consider this, along with all the events of 2.0, I think the concept of artificial Threnodian resonators has been hinted at since this far back. And I'ma manifest it again. Geshulin will return as an artificial Threnodian resonator for Overthax. Come on, Fraxidus, bring daddy home. Speaking of bringing people home, yeah, did you know Scar's actually in jail? But many players, including myself, suspect that he might have got locked up on purpose because what they came to collect in Jinzhou was located deep within it. And jails are often located in deep underground areas, hence the confinement fake out. So, with the fetch quest done, Phrolova's gotta use her get out of jail card. 4 patches later, and Phrolova finds herself in Renacita, conversing with the head of the Order of the Deep, Primus Fenrico. Remember in patch 1.0 how Phrolova eventually wanted to get Leviathan's power off a simulation to revive her people? Well, now she's here to collect. At this point, she's found a means of getting her people's reverberations into a vessel, and now she needs to create a sonosphere for them that will facilitate their existences for good, the Lost Beyond. But the thing is, with Leviathan at the time being fused with Imperator's form, Renacita's Sentinel, Phrolova needs them separated, and Fenrico's only means of doing that is by deepening the people's beliefs. Whatever that means. Now, in return for aiding the Fraxidus, Fenrico asks for Phrolova's aid in quelling the chaos that the travelers from far and wide will eventually bring into Raguna during the city's carnival. And in this list is Rover 2, a blessing in disguise, because Phrolova believes he'll be the one that can successfully split the divinities. After all, being the hero he is, if he learns that Imperator is trapped within the body of a Threnodian, he'll for sure go above and beyond to save whoever he can. And so, fast forward some time, and Rover's off to Renacita, except his purpose for coming here was to actually try and fix Abby's fading reverberations. He actually doesn't know about Imperator's assimilation until a little later down the road. And on his way there, his first impression of the region is getting fin flipped by Cetus the Tidebreaker, a special narwhal echo that, unfortunately, got tagged by Phrolova's frequency, which meant it was under her control. So technically, it was Phrolova that got her pimp slap against Rover. Screw you for breaking your promise to me. But Rover still makes it to Raguna, one of the cities of Renacita. And as he's traveling around, Phrolova, as per usual, monitors from a distance. During his travels, he also comes to learn about the city's lore, namely around the Blessed Maiden, Cardathea, the supposed former resonator of the Sentinel Imperator. And as we reach the patch's final act, Phrolova makes her proper return to the story. I suspect she tagged a flower into Rover, because as she beckons him to make her way over, the screen is filled with her velvet aura, as if we've been hypnotized. And to be fair, I would be too, without the flower. I guess this is what Cetus be seeing. Anyway, on the rooftop, as Rover recalls her identity, Phrolova is honored to be remembered. A sarcastic remark that, now that I think about it, is such an interesting line considering dude can't even remember their meeting and promise from way back. Here, Phrolova outlines to Rover how him and her are actually seeking the same thing, the existence of the extraordinary resonator, Cardathea. But to explain her lore, her truth, Phrolova proposes to do it in a more grandeur manner, a live action performance that involves everyone in the carnival, whether they want to be or not. Now, in one of the dialogue options, you can ask for Phrolova to just explain it now, and then she'll mention how patience is a virtue. And once again, that is such a funny line because girl had been patient for hundreds of years for Rover. But alas, it's time for the show to start. And goddamn, girl, did you just split the skies? But all that's happening here? Yeah, it definitely feels like there's been a sonorosphere that has been overlaid with reality. So here's me thinking all this stuff is Cristoforo's handiwork. Cristoforo, by the way, being another Fraxis overseer, who was working with Phrolova at the time. Anyway, to help maintain the carnival's jovialness, the Raguna gang masks the chaos by framing the attack as being a live stage play starring Rover and co. Even Phrolova too gets in on the fun, which is so cute. But eventually, Rover reaches her, and in luring them into her sonoro, Phrolova finally reveals the truth of the Blessed Maiden.
The Holy Maiden has long succumbed to darkness, drawing power from a heretical force and leading her people into depravity. And the minister, having uncovered this truth, has vowed to root out this corruption himself.
Now, as we know after the events of 2.2, some of that truth seems kinda what? But then again, it might have been what Fenrico told Phrolova, hence the rather biased explanation. Now, before I continue, I'd like to highlight how Phrolova mentions that
there is no playwright to script a happy ending for us.
And that just totally sounds like Cristoforo here. Anyhow, boss fight time. But Phrolova doesn't fight us. She actually calls on her persona, Hecate. I guess it's this tacit discord that makes Phrolova an actual offensive force in the Fraxidus if the situation comes down to it. This is why you don't see Phrolova bringing an instrument to a sword fight. She brings Hecate. Anyway, during this fight, Phrolova outlines in her very Shakespearean ways 3 prophecies that have been or will be fulfilled in Rena Sita. Prophecies which I believe refer to Fenrico, or perhaps a particularly new kingly figure who will appear in the later patches. First prophecy:
abandon the trifles of sentiment, and you shall ascend the throne. To achieve this, a sacrifice of fresh blood is demanded, a purge of the Holy Maiden and all heretics.
This prophecy's been fulfilled already, for sure, because way back when Cardathia rebelled against Imperator because she learned that Imperator wasn't actually truly Imperator, it was Leviathan assimilated with it, her friends and family were all killed or corrupted, and Cardathia locked herself up in some tower in the sky. Still, as for who ascends the throne, maybe Fenrico, since he became the Primus of the Order? Now as for the second prophecy,
no mortal shall inflict upon you even the slightest harm, and assuredly, you shall find favor with your people.
that is also sounding kind of true, considering Fenrico's been pretty untouchable for the most part. That being said, he for sure does not have the favor of all the people, so yeah, I really don't know if they're talking about Fenrico here. And finally, the third prophecy.
Pleasure born of violence shall end in violence.
All that just literally tells me that if things hit the fan, it'll be in Septimon, because this city is literally where pleasure is born from violence. Come on. And so, after a 2-stage fight with Hecate, now comes the battle's conclusion. Here, Phrolova reflects on how the king will not take his final bow in this act, and that 2 prophecies have already been fulfilled. So I guess the third is still up for grabs, or to be changed by Rover. When hearing this, maybe they really were talking about Fenrico. When you think about what happens in 2.5, and the fact that he isn't a kingly figure, what, is he gonna come back somehow? Anyway, it's Phrolova versus the Raguna gang, and Girl is really holding her own. But at this point, she's not trying to kill Rover, just trying to make her escape. Because you see how she's not using Hecate here? Rover is persistent, yes, but all she's trying to do is loosen Rover's airtime. But the Raguna gang are making that hard. Still, Phrolova just escapes a near decapitation by Rover. But unfortunately, the same could not be said about her baton, nor her bandages, which got nicked. And revealed under is a rather very normal looking eye. Not a flesh wound, not a crazy eyeball, just something normal. But don't worry, there's far more in that eye than meets the eye. And so, Phrolova disappears, her control over Cetus finally breaks, and the Raguna Carnival ends in cheers and sunshines. But fast forward a day, and hey, Phrolova's enjoying some of that sunshine. She's seen together with Cristoforo, discussing their next objective to find the actual existence of their special resonator, Cardathia, the one that's potentially wielding the powers of both Sentinel and Thenodian. Also, probably for her own goals, Phrolova proposes that she'll nudge Cristoforo's plot a little, a line we'll see repeated later. Whilst she points out just how significant Rover is to their plans, Cristoforo outlines how he doesn't share her fondness of that sort of puppet theater. And that's such an interesting line because, well, he's right. Phrolova has the power to control things through their frequencies, including people. But Cristoforo, he wants them genuine reactions. Thus, all he does is just manipulate the stage. That's it. Cristoforo also points out how Phrolova should more often,
I think you should leave your secluded mansion. Take a walk and listen to the voices scattered across the world.
because I suspect all day outside of Fraxidus' work, Phrolova is just constantly grinding to perfect her people's rebirth. And lastly, Cristoforo ends off the dialogue and the patch with this little monologue.
All things ascend toward a singular point of convergence, and what awaits at the end is immortality.
Now, of course, back in 2.0, well, just like, what the hell are you on about, mate? But now come to Wuwa 2.5, damn, it's so cool to finally understand what these crumbs of lore are actually all about. But alas, once again, we probably won't be seeing Phrolova until some patches later. Now, I know I did just say we won't see her until some patches down, but I also did say properly see her, so I'm not wrong here. Because when Phrolova appears in Wuthering Waves 2.2, it's not exactly outright. It's implied her existence was there, and this implication is seen near the story's conclusion, after Rover is successful in freeing Cardathia from the inverted tower. There, as the two hug, we see petals of a particular crimson flower, and this is for sure some Phrolova iconography. Now, as to what the hell was Phrolova doing here, most likely to confirm the existence of the special resonator they were wanting to find in Wuwa 2.0. And now they know she not only exists, but is alive, it's time the Fraxidus make their moves again, but in a new city. Now, before Phrolova gets involved in the meat of 2.4, she's actually been pretty busy in Septimont with some side projects, as we'll see in this exploration quest. Now, the timing of this happening, I'm not certain on, but I'm just placing it before the 2.4 story because it sounds like this all happened prior to it. So, what was Phrolova doing in the Mournful Canyons of Septimont, another city of Renacita? Experiments, namely research into the Dark Tide. Yep. The Red Witch, as she is called here, wanted to assess the capabilities of the Dark Tide, and what better way to study it than in practicals, because she legit transformed people's frequencies using the Dark Tide. Some into wicked tacit discords, others into lingering human reverberations. One person that she transformed, honestly that dude deserved it, freaking corrupt Senate dog, and then another person she transformed, she actually got consent to do it. Still, kinda stuff to do it all, you know? Well, I'm sure these two weren't her only practicals though, because who knows how long she's been here. Maybe she was here well before even 1.0. Nevertheless, the outcomes of her practicals have rendered this place into a little ghost town, because human reverberations be casually hanging around the place. Although, what's interesting is that if you look into some of the notes she took in this location, there's a record of her actually doing something normal. Cooking. Legitimately. In searching through the bag of one of her practicals, yeah, it's stuffed, I know, she comes across a recipe, which out of curiosity, she tries replicating. The results? A mild pass. But hey, give me some of that Phrolova cooking. Anyway, Phrolova, where you at in 2.4? Whilst Phrolova does have her own big reasons for being in Septimont, but now she's hanging with Cristoforo to check on his plans. After all, when your co-worker has fished a corpse out of the sea and built a whole goddamn laboratory within the heart of a gladiator city, yeah, of course you want to make sure you're across things. And this body he fished out is quite special, considering how Phrolova points out that if not for the sword embedded in its chest, you'd think it was alive. Now, I'll preface that their meeting here takes place a few days after Rova freed Cardathea from the inverted tower. And with this event happening, Phrolova learns of Cristoforo's success in reawakening the slivers of Leviathan's frequency that was left on this corpse. And thus from it, Cristoforo relays his plans to nourish the Thenonian's growth, whilst in Septimont using his forte. He also starts to yap about the tragedy of the body he's experimenting on, to which Phrolova's literally like,
디스커스팅한 냄새가 나요.
Fast forward a little bit, and whilst Rova's probably just entered into Septimont, Phrolova continues to reflect on the results of Cristoforo's plot. With the revival of Leviathan's power, Cristoforo is confident that it could destabilize Cardathea's frequencies, thus enabling him to mold her into the Thenodian, because after all, girl is half Thenodian, half Sentinel. But Phrolova's like, dude, why are you trying to gamble everything on chance to achieve the Grand Architect's scheme? To which Cristoforo's like, mummy, chill, because he's aware that Phrolova's agitation is probably stemming from her need to have her plan completed ASAP, a plan to rebirth her people. So, as mentioned back in Wuthering Waves 2.0, Phrolova advises Cristoforo to nudge Septimont's plot just a little, because doing this will also help cover their tracks a little whilst Rova's on their tail. Yes, while their plan involves growing the Thenodian, what they actually want to do is be able to store that power so it's always in Fraxus' hands, inside the gem. So, just allude Rova into thinking they want to grow Leviathan, that's it. Don't talk about the gem. And with Cristoforo's acceptance, he hands Phrolova a copy of the script so that she may do the nudge. And so, fast forward to the Great Aegon that officially takes place in Septimont, and after Rova's first night, his dream is met with Phrolova, who insists that she's just here to talk. And since it's all just a dream, it's not like they could harm each other anyway. So, much like she's mentioned twice, and now thrice, Phrolova's whole point of being here is to nudge Cristoforo's plot a little, by essentially blabbing to Rova with out-of-context clues regarding the whole plot that's going on in Septimont. She even gives clues into how Cristoforo's whole forte works. And honestly, if not for Phrolova's intervention here, Rova would not have been able to successfully solve Septimont's plight. But then again, now that we know Cristoforo purposely let Phrolova do this plot nudge is really just another movement in the Fraxis' plans, and Rova's win was part of that plan too. So, from the bootleg Thenodian's corpse, after it is defeated by the Septimontian Resonator, Lupa, Phrolova retrieves the gem, which now contains the essences of Leviathan's power. And now, it's time to enact her lifelong plan. But you know something that wasn't part of her plan? Wuthering Waves 2.5. Now, if you recall, Phrolova's primary goal in life, the entire reason she joined the Fraxis, her literal reason for existing again, is to revive her people, who were so unfairly taken away from her. And to achieve this, she spent her life conducting research into Wave 1 phenomena and applying her theories. So, coming into Wuthering Waves 2.5, she now has all her pieces. She knows how to merge human reverberations into a vessel, which will be tacit discords in this case. She's got the facility to help her realize her sonorosphere that will store her reborn people. And finally, she's got her hands on the Thenonian power to ensure everything sticks together permanently without her continued use. Beautiful. Now, of course, the actual validity of this all probably stands to question, but hey, this is genuine progress. And just recently, when she was in the Fabricatorium, a giant underwater laboratory built by a joint effort between the Order and the Fraxidus, she was actually able to manifest her sonorosphere for the first time. But in creating the sphere, it significantly drained her powers. And then, the unexpected happened. Because yes, whilst Phrolova and Fenrico were in cahoots with each other, that all ended there and then when Fenrico ordered his posses to jump Phrolova. Why? Because he too had his own desires to create a peaceful world. And with Phrolova's Sonoro being something that could realize his vision, he was like, bet, Run them pockets! But thankfully, Phrolova is not only able to seal away her lost beyond, but she is also able to hide the gem and ultimately escape, but not unscathed. In fact, she was heavily wounded, and now it's a race against time, because thanks to the gem housing a growing Leviathan, it'll only be a matter of time before her Beyond Snow cannot contain the gem anymore, thus freeing itself and making it accessible to Fenrico's clutches again. And with her being in no state to fight, she's got to reel in some help, and luckily one just happened to drop into the sea. So, fishing Rover out, their initial encounter is once again a nearly fatal one, but after explaining her situation to him, the two temporarily form a truce, since Rover 2 now needs the gem. But since this is his first time in the Fabricatorium, he'll definitely get lost, lose time, and ultimately lose the gem. Hence why he'll have to rely on Phrolova as a tour guide. Henceforth, team up. Yeah, essentially the whole plot of Wuthering Waves 2.5 is a once-in-a-lifetime team-up between the Phraxis and the Black Shores to reclaim the Thenodian gem. The Black Shores is where Rover's from, by the way. But during their journey, there are various key events that are worth noting. One of them is that the revelation of Phrolova's actual once in this world. Because, yeah, sure, she spent her lifetime trying to rebirth her people, but based on recent evidence, it seems more reasonable to assume her truest wish is that she simply wants to be back with her people, be it in their revival or her death. Because just as she's about to pass from her wounds, until Rover heals her, Phrolova sort of wonders if her death will be real this time. Is she finally going back? But that all comes to a close when the Grand Architect enters her mind and they're like, nah, revival is what you truly want to do. Manipulation at its finest. Speaking of the Grand Architect, yes, Phrolova eventually meets with them within the Fabricatorium after her and Rover are temporarily separated. Appearing in the form of Chris, an action that they've done before, the Architect proposes that it'd be best if Phrolova gives the gem to Cristoforo first rather than realize her beyond. Because at the moment, not only is the Fabricatorium in chaos, but also the Lord of Septimont, Augusta, has made her move, and the Phraxidus need to respond promptly. Furthermore, it'd be better if Phrolova was able to invest more time to making a solution more perfect, thus the recommendation. But with Phrolova still wanting to ensure her people are rebirthed, as promised by the Architect himself, the Architect actually points out how they will be rebirthed once Phrolova merges with the Beyond, a phenomena that has been gradually going on since 2.5's start. So, with this in mind, eventually Rover and Phrolova reunite, but in a moment of getting outnumbered, Phrolova actually drags Rover into the Beyond, and it's here where Rover gets literal front row seats to his past with Phrolova. Still, before he can even confirm the legitimacy of it all, they're out and up against Fenrico, who's unfortunately gotten his hands on the gem. But it's your local corrupt pastor versus the Lord Arbiter and one of the oldest Phraxis overseers. Yeah, the ball's not in his park. And thus, in defeating him, we finally get to the oh-so-famous debate. Usually it's the cinematic cutscenes which give each patch their peak moment, but not this one. It's in Phrolova kind of ripping Rover apart. Verbally, do we get cinema? Although, it's more like Rover failing at every attempt to try and stop her, because in questioning the realisticness of her goals or condemning her morality, Phrolova more and more pulls Rover off of his high horse. Yeah, she's done bad stuff, but he has too. I mean, he done goofed centuries ago by forgetting our girl and potentially starting this all. And whilst there are certainly grounds to defend Rover, yeah, he took the L with this one. And he takes another L when he ultimately loses the gem to the Phraxidus. I mean, Phrolova had both Cristoforo and Scar on speed dial. It's basically just Rover and his pet here. He ain't winning that. And I guess in tilting him more with that bow, Rover crashes out and piffs his blade at her, which Phrolova takes. And thus, as she falls into the Fabricatorium, her merge with the Beyond completes. And now, or at least for now, she's probably at the most peace she's ever been in for centuries. Finally back living with her people, as if everything that's transpired was all just a bad dream. And thus ends, for now, the life of Phrolova. Anyhow, this has been your boy Tomotoki, and hopefully you guys enjoyed my little deep dive into Phrolova. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on the character, follow my socials if you want to keep up with your boy, and like and subscribe if you want more from your boy. Much love, and take care.